about some future programs, inshallah.
Inshallah. I want to please, when we get a chance, to fill me in on this meeting.
Yes, inshallah. We'll do that.
Assalamu alaikum, Lauren.
It's so good to see you.
It's good as well. Oh my goodness, I miss you guys so much. SubhanAllah.
Miss you. Oh man, I realized I was like, I just have to start coming on Tuesdays. You got things I could come to. I just have to like do like this to my schedule and be like, so I can be there.
Allah is so kind that He allows us to be able to spend time together, even when we're far apart. SubhanAllah. It makes my heart just feel at ease. Alhamdulillah. So are we waiting just a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
I'm going to grab some water. Is that okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
See my ridiculous water bottle?
Right. That's what I need. You're making me thirsty.
It's the only way I can get enough water in the day is if I have this one giant jug.
Okay. Be right back, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you. So, Sister Lauren, this program is live on Facebook and YouTube.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
No, that's good to know.
Yeah. FYI.
Yeah, no pressure. We just went live to the whole Al-Hijrah ecosystem.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Please make sure that everyone is muted. We start our program, inshallah, and welcome everyone. Today's program, as you all know, is every Thursday. We meet at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to discuss and learn different aspects of Islam, aspects of worship, ibadah, learning how to be a good Muslim, a better Muslim, and different ways that we learn from each other. And as you all know that we try to bring a guest speaker every Thursday. And we're very happy that today we have two speakers, Sister Lauren with us, and also Sister Aisha Prime. Sister Lauren is, mashallah, the founder of Center DC. It's a program which is geared towards helping young adults, Muslims, and also new Muslims who are in and around DC area. It's a place where they come and meet and learn from each other. It's a social place, social gathering, a comfortable place. And mashallah, she's also very active in many other areas. And she is one of the regular participants of our community night that we do at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center. And then Sister Aisha Prime, I'm sure many of you know Sister Aisha. Sister Aisha is director of women's program at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center. And mashallah, she's also, she teaches at NYU. And she's a very sought after speaker all over the country and internationally. Today's topic, last week during our presentation, the question was raised by one of our sister, and it was about how do I, as a new Muslim, relate with my family. And sometimes they ask questions which I am not sure what is the right answer, and sometimes we are not comfortable to really cover a topic, speak on a topic. And so I thought that, the best thing would be to let us address this topic. And mashallah, I was telling Sister Lauren and Sister Aisha that almost probably 90% of the members that we have at Al-Hijrah Revert's program are Muslims within the last couple of years. And mashallah, they are all very strong in their faith and commitment. But yes, these are some of the questions which we have to address. And so I chose, and I'm happy that Sister Lauren and Sister Aisha, they were both available and accepted to come and speak. Mashallah, they're both very knowledgeable, but at the same time, their own struggles when they took Shahada, when they decided to take this giant step in their life, which is not an easy decision, and the challenges that they have to handle. So, which will be more, from their personal experiences, also from the from Islamic knowledge that they have. So we'll start with Sister Lauren, and then first Sister Lauren will speak, then Sister Aisha, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. So Sister Lauren, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to be with you, even virtually. I feel like it's so interesting. I know that this is being recorded, but for those of you who are here and comfortable, if anybody's uncomfortable, I just want to invite you to turn your cameras on so I can see your beautiful faces. It makes me feel more grounded in this space sometimes when that happens. And I know a lot of times you're chilling and, want to be in community in different ways, but just putting it out there for an invitation if anybody feels bold and or comfortable. Bismillah. So every time I get invited, whenever I get invited to be with or sit with or talk to people who've embraced or are considering embracing Islam, I get really excited. Alhamdulillah, because generally speaking, it's such an opportunity and I remember every time I'm in spaces like this, I remember how exciting it was and how big of a deal and like all of the adjustments, all of the changes, all of the challenges that came with that time in my life. This past January, I celebrated 10 years being Muslim, which is a really big deal. It's a long time, alhamdulillah. And I remember early on, like, if you would have told me 10 years ago that that Allah would have me leading a Muslim community in the DC area, going to school to become a chaplain, I would have looked at you like you were absolutely nuts. Like, without a doubt, no way I would have believed you. And generally, like, I think, subhanAllah, when I think about that, I'm just like, you really never know what Allah has in store for you or what Allah has planned for you. And it's so hard to see that, especially right at the beginning, because you're like, I'm just starting on this journey. I have no idea where it's going to take me. But subhanAllah, there's so many blessings that are in store, so many challenges and so many blessings and so many opportunities that come with embracing the faith. Yeah. And so I think when it comes to my story, the quick version, as those of you who've converted already, like, y'all know you have like the somebody on the metro just asked me my conversion story, like 2-minute, 2-sentence version versus like somebody I really care about is asking me the conversion story. So I have to like condense it really small. I'm going to give a really closer to the metro side, even though I feel like you guys are already close and people who I'd want to share deeply with. But I'm really so excited to talk with you all and hear questions. But I essentially was brought up agnostic. My family never talked about God at all. We didn't talk about religion. God wasn't a topic of discussion in my household or family. But my mom did go out of her way to make sure that we were exposed to different ways of doing things, ways of being. I went to a Diwali festival when I was little. We would go to Passover at friend's house. She even took us to Easter Mass one year. And like, looking back, I know that was like my mom's way of being like, figure it out, without really giving the direction or like being super direct about it. So lots of shout out to my mom. She's the best. So God wasn't really something that I was thinking about or interrogating really that regularly, and especially growing up. But when I was in college, I realized that there was something missing. And I wanted to get involved in social justice work and be more active and like change things that were wrong and unjust. And the only group on campus that was really about that life happened to be a group of Muslims. So I started to like hang out with the guys at the MSA. I didn't know it was the MSA. They didn't like shake hands or like wouldn't be alone with me in the little meeting room by ourselves. And I was like, that's different, but I appreciate your energy and vibes. Nobody's ever treated me like that. I really like, okay, interesting. I'm learning about you. So I never saw myself, even when we had conversations and debates and would go back and forth about things. And I was learning about Islam in that process of like having these friends and these companions who were walking with me with my bright blue hair and facial piercings and like all types of not Muslim clothes. Bless them. I like never saw myself in the tradition. And so I'd fast forward, I'd spent some time in the Gambia while I was studying abroad, transformative experience, and also realized that the things that I loved about the Muslims at home, I loved about the people in the Gambia. And I'm like, there's something here to these people. They're quality people. I want to be a good person, and these people are good people. So my motivation was always coming from like, how do I be good? I want to be good. How can I be good? And when I started to interrogate the ideas, I realized, like, actually, the whole point is you guys are following this tremendous example. I'd read, like, this 8th grade reading level seerah of Prophet Muhammad's life, like a biography of his life. I was like, oh, yeah, it's that guy. I like that guy. I want to be like that guy. These people follow that guy. I want to follow that guy. Make me Muslim. Let's go. So I became Muslim really with, like, very little foundational knowledge, really minimal understanding, concept about God. The way that it was framed to me was really like, do you believe that there's one God? I was like, sure. Do you believe that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the last and final messenger? I'm like, yeah, sign me up. Like, that's yes to that part. And from there, I was like kind of thrown into the whirlwind of like, people were celebrating, super excited, super happy, and like uplifting. It was magic. And then like, okay, now I'm in this lifestyle that I know nothing about, and I'm learning from scratch as I go. And but what's more than that, I have to go talk to my family and talk to my friends about this dramatic, life-changing, big altering decision that I've made fairly off just gut, like on some like, this is the right thing to do for me right now. I'm doing it. Alhamdulillah, let's go. It caught people in my life largely off guard. And so there were many conversations that I remembered. Imam Naeem was like, talk about your family. What was that like? And I remember just having some really interesting conversations about religion with people who I love, who knew me my whole life, who never talked about God at all. And now we're confronted with this like very visible, very different, very in your face, like, okay, we're talking about Islam now. Like, that's what's happening. Why is this? Tell me about this. And like, I think the biggest thing that I remember that was the most helpful thing was in all of those conversations, the biggest thing that I wanted my family to know is that like, Islam is here to like polish me and make me better. Like, I'm still the same person. And that my belief in God and my belief in efforts to try to emulate and follow Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, like all of those pieces are supposed to enhance who I already am and make me a better person, make me a better family member, make me a better friend. All of it is supposed to like elevate me. This is like leveling up. And so like all the things, like some of the conversations I had with my family members, they were really sad, especially my male family members, they were really sad that I covered my hair. I used to dye my hair and like get it cut every week. It was a really big statement piece. Don't Google me. But essentially like this was a big thing where they were like, who are you now? You look totally different. You're somebody else. Like you're not the same person. And I'm like, is my hair the only thing that makes me me? Is you being able to see and like interact with me in that creative way? Is that the only way that I'm creative? Is that the only way you get to see my personality? Like, I like had to, it happened over time and through many conversations and many gatherings that I'm able to prove that to my family and like prove that to people. And now it's no big deal. Like it's no, I remember when it used to be awkward, and that awkwardness, like as people realize, okay, this isn't just a phase, she's sticking with this, like it shifted more to understanding and appreciation. And now my family will like, interesting thing for Christmas one year, I did when I first became Muslim, it was a really big deal. I was like, y'all, I'm Muslim, I don't go to Christmas. Like no Christmas, I don't do that. Muslims don't celebrate Christmas, I don't go. And I didn't go to Thanksgiving either. I was like, I can't, I'm Muslim now, and you need to know that. And my family, bless their hearts, they were all like, well, could you come the day before Christmas so we can at least see you? Could you come the day after Christmas so we can see you? It's not really Christmas then. And the same with like Thanksgiving. So every time these big holidays would roll over, it was like what, like, we want to see you because we love you. And for me, it took me years before I was comfortable to be like, I'm coming around. Because the significance and the importance of like maintaining your family bonds as like an Islamic principle and an Islamic goal, for me felt just as if it felt more important than the possibility of me showing up to an event that had a Christmas tree at it. Like the idea of like my relationship with God is not going to be torn apart because I sat down at a table that was celebrated with my family who's celebrating something that I don't celebrate. Mind you, it was like Christmas tree, Christmas, Santa Claus, Christmas, not necessarily like a religious Christmas per se. So that also felt kind of like an interesting thing to navigate. But that was really hard early on, figuring out like, how do I communicate how important this is to me and how much it's changed me, but that it's also, that I'm also still me. I'm also still connected to you all. I also still care about you and like want to be with you. So all of those things were all just navigating in the beginning. And I totally didn't go the route of like the concept of like being Muslim in secret. I just sort of went hard. I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to be Muslim. I'm going to start. I didn't start covering until 6 months being in, because that felt like such a big public display of like people in my family, people knew that I converted. I talked about it to people often early on. And I guess, and part of me putting on hijab, like 6 months later, it was like summer too, like the middle of summer, where I was like, this is the time, it's time for me to do this. That I remember being a big, like, this is a big deal coming out now. I used to like, I realized too, like, I think part of the things that led up to that of me like really fully coming out as being all the way Muslim, like visibly Muslim all the time, like full-time visibly Muslim, was like realizing that like I have to do too much like when prayer time comes in, I have to do too much finagling to like make this fit into my lifestyle. Like I started noticing myself like longer, looser clothes and like not feeling comfortable in what I had. And I'm like, okay, I think it's time for me to do this. And it's not convenient and it's not going to be easy and everybody's going to know. And I don't know what people are going to say or think or do. And I was like, Allah has gotten me this far. Like, I'm going to be okay. Inshallah. Like, it's people, lots of people do this. And I was worried about people cutting anyway, like that process of like, is somebody going to cut me out? And I realized that if there are places that I can't go to in hijab, I probably shouldn't be going there. And if there are people who don't want to be around me or don't want to associate with me because I'm Muslim, I probably don't want to hang out or be around them either. And like really sitting with that of being like, if my life changes and my social network changes, and if my family, even the family members that want to be in touch with me if this is a deal breaker for them, then like, what does it mean to let that go as well as part of like what part of my sacrifice? What does it look like for that to be part of what I'm offering up and saying like, this is how important God is to me? So yeah, I'm with you guys. I know what that was like. I remember it so intimately, like all of those things. May Allah make it easy for you and bless you all with gentleness in all of your relationships and the knowledge to know when to say the right thing and when to not say anything at all. Because I think that's another piece, like our actions, like when we embrace this tradition like fully, our actions get to speak for Islam. We don't have to always be the ones to speak for Islam. That's a really big tab and really big shoes to fill. But inshallah, you guys are around good company already, being in a group of converts and a group of people to support you. So inshallah, that makes it easier, and that you guys already are doing the things, you're taking steps already to help build that support network that's necessary to make it easier when stuff gets hard, because it probably will. Allah save you and keep you comfortable and with ease always. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Sister Lauren. Thank you, Jazakallah Khair. We will come back to inshallah in Q&A. I'm sure there are some questions for you as well. And so now, inshallah, we request Sister Aisha Prime for Director, Al-Hijrah Women's Program. Sister Aisha.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I pray that you guys are all doing well, and that that you find yourself firm on this path. So I'm Lauren, and my began 25 years ago. I'm a major in, so I want to start actually going back to, I remember being about in 7th grade, and I had seen this woman, this Muslim woman on the street. And when I saw her on the street, she was stunning to me. And literally I stopped in my tracks and watched her walk up the block until I could no longer see her. And I just wondered where she was going, what her life was like, what was she thinking. I was wondering about how bold she was in her statement, but I didn't know what it meant. So different than Lauren, I grew up in a very religious household. I grew up in a household that was firmly Christian. We went to church every Sunday unless you were deathly ill. We went to Wednesday night Bible study. Sometimes we had prayer or Bible study in our homes on Tuesday. Talking about God was a part of the way that morality was taught. And so, and God was very much a part of not only my individual identity, but my family identity. And that was also brought into our cultural identity because it was introduced as it is what gave us the resilience to continue, right? That it is prayer and our connectedness to God that gave us literally freedom in all types of ways. And so my grandparents established, on my father's side, my grandparents were civil rights activists who established a Baptist church, Friendship Baptist Church. My grandmother started, the first African-American NAACP. And so all of that, right, is just like jam packed on both sides. So for me, that was just very much a part of my consciousness. And so just to kind of fast forward the story, as she said, your 2-minute story or your long story is I became a youth in Senegal, and I was just all excited about this just new adventure. I had jet lag, I couldn't sleep. So right about 4:00 in the morning, as I was trying to doze off, I fell into this space between sleep and wakefulness. And it was not just a physical feeling, but it was also a very, I don't know, spiritual, eerie place. Like that was like an interesting consciousness. And the adhan went off. And as the adhan went off, I vividly remember feeling as if somebody had laid me on a table, put defibrillators on my chest, and went clear. Right? I just went. I remember I felt as if I had taken my first breath. And I was like, what is that? What is that? And so I ran to the balcony of the El Kandahar Hotel in Morocco, in Casablanca. And I was looking, like I opened the balcony and I was like trying to figure out where this sound is coming from. And as you know, in the Muslim world, like it's coming in waves, right? One masjid and the next, and over here, and it's coming from over here. And so initially I was so intrigued and felt as if I were being carried on the waves of this sound. But then I started to get afraid. I said, well, what does it mean? And I said, if they're calling it all over the city in the dark of night, it must mean something bad. It must be a war. Like it's a call to war. All the movies started to flood back to me about what we had heard about, being in the Middle East and out of lands. And I was like, it's a call to war. So I ran downstairs to the concierge, or the leader of the group. And I said, what's that sound? And he says, oh, that's the adhan. That's the call to prayer. And I said, no, it's not. It's 4:00 in the morning. It's dark outside. And so he said, yes, it's the call to prayer. So I said, come outside with me. And he listened to what I hear. So he came outside. He said, yeah, that's the call to prayer. So I said, well, who's praying at this time? So he said, well, this is Fajr. He started to explain to me the Fajr prayer. And then I said, well, translate what they're saying. So as he translated the adhan for me, I remember very clearly like a feeling inside my chest as if something just fell down. And I felt a deep need to be away from him. And when I went to my room and I sat on the floor and I cried for about 45 minutes. And I said, okay. I said, God, I know that you love them and they love you. I said, I know that I've worshiped you my whole life, but I have never gotten up before the sun came up to pray to you. But I know they love you because they're early to meet you. They get up before the sun gets up to greet you. And I said, I know you love them because you told them your name. Like we call you God, but they know your name. And I was just baffled by that. And I was like, wow, I'm honored to meet you, to find out that your name is Allah. And so I said, please, I just said, I know you love them and they love you, so just make me from amongst them. Just count me from amongst them. And I was like, I don't know how they're praying or, I don't know. I want to be from those people that you love. So that was that. I mean, that was the beginning. And so we went through Morocco. I remember we arrived in the first masjid and I was like, you guys can continue the rest of the tour. I want to stay right here. And then after we left and we went to Senegal, it was different. I stayed with a family. And everything about being with that family was just eye-opening. Like as Lauren discusses in Gambia, there were just so many things about their character, like one after another, that I started to say, there's something different about you than it is about me. There's something different about the way that you understand and practice faith than me. So I said, I said to myself, just keep showing me. I was saying to God, like, just keep showing me. Just let me see. And then Ramadan came. And I was like, oh my God, these people are starving themselves for God. And literally the host mother would get up after she would, I remember just thinking she's fasting, but she would get up and she would literally not only cook for me, she would feed me from her hand to my mouth. And if you grow up an American teenager, that's just not something that's very that's not a common thing. So I remember just sitting in front of her with my mouth agape, like, who are you? Who are you? What are you doing? Just the tenderness of her heart really spoke to me. I came back to America. I fell into a serious depression because I could not make my life before that trip make sense. I couldn't put myself back together in the same way. My mother was like, they probably, put some juju on my baby. Who knows what they've done to my child, right? That she just, and I was like, I'm just so sad. I just miss them. I was like, I miss that sound, that Azan thingy. I was like, I need that. I just miss all that. And so one day I just was like looking for anything Islam, Muhammad, Abdullah, mosque, anything. And I found the Islamic Center in DC. And long story short, I literally went there. I found out there was a class on Sunday. Mind you, I'm still a teenager living at home. I found out there was a class on Sunday. And I remember when Sister Karima, Allah bless her, found me sitting in a corner in the masjid, just sitting. And she's like, you look young. You're not supposed to, what are you doing here in the middle of the day? Aren't you supposed to be in school? And I was like, I am, but I love this place. It's peaceful. They're going to sing my favorite song. And they're going to do that thing where they fall down and my whole life is going to feel at peace again. And so then she said, well, there's a class on Sunday. Come Sunday. When she said Sunday, I looked like, you trying to sign in my death warrant. Right? Like, I go to church every Sunday, come rain or come shine. And I was like, my parents would kill me. Like, if I don't have a doctor's note, I can't get out of church. So I don't know what gave me the courage to go home and tell my mother when Sunday came, then like, why aren't you dressed? I don't know what gave me the courage other than Allah to say, I'm not going. I'm going to this class. And I did. I remember feeling, because my parents were my father was not only military, but my mother was from the tradition of, I will put my hands on you. Right? So I was waiting. I was like, I'm not going. Right? Like, respect for parents was everything in my household. Again, my parents were military. I called my father. When he called me, I say, yes, sir. My mother calls me, I say, yes, ma'am. Also because I'm from a Southern background. So respect for them was everything. So long story short, she was like, okay, this is some kind of phase that you're going through. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss it. I remember a morning, my mother shaking me violently about 7 a.m. She said, I heard you this morning. I heard you going to be Muslim. You're crazy. And I remember I sat up and I said, well, what's crazy about it? And she said, I have taught you to be free. Why would you choose something that would oppress you? And I said, it's still 7 in the morning, and I was like, Mama, okay. And she said, I want to understand. Why are you choosing to walk 3 steps behind a man? You're going to, we've taught you to be free. Is this about some boy you've met? And I was like, no, it's not about a boy. It's not about, And I just had to leave it, to be honest, for the sake of peace. At that particular time, I had taken Shahada and was literally hiding my hijab in my backpack. I would leave the house in the morning with my hijab, like regular clothes that my mom was seeing me in, and I'd get around the corner, like behind the house, because I didn't want anyone to see me without my hijab on, and basically sneak and put my scarf on and go to school. I came home one day, and my dad had gone through my backpack, and he saw the Quran, and he was like, listen, you are now banned from reading this until you read the Bible cover to cover. And I was like, okay, deal. I remember I said, I will start from the very beginning. I will read it cover to cover. I will read every page so that you can give me my Quran back. And so I remember I got to the first page, and it was the introduction. And I will never forget what it said that further sealed my conviction. It said, there are additions and omissions to this book that will be marked by this symbol. And I remember when I read that, I said, how could there be additions and omissions to the book of God? So I said, okay, well, that, that for me is further conviction. Of course, there's a much longer version to that. But long story short, my parents eventually decided that they would kick me out. They said that if you're going to live this life, join a cult and betray, pretty much the words were not betrayal, but something close to it. That I had chosen to become a separatist, pretty much from my family. My father's exact words were, how are we ever going to be one family if you are choosing something totally different than who we have been? There was also kind of, this feeling of, there was a very deep, loyal sense to the civil rights movement, especially as it relates to Martin. And I was like, but there was always Malcolm. My book, he was a lot cooler, but that's me. And this is at a time that, the X movie had come out by Spike Lee. So my parents kicked me out. By the grace and mercy of Allah, I had a Muslim friend whose parents called me and asked me to pack my things if I would come live with them. And that journey kind of began because they were the age of my parents. I lived with them. They took care of me. They started to communicate with my family, invite them over for dinner, begin to just kind of ease their heart. One particular time, my aunt gave a call and said to my mother, is my niece, is she on drugs? And my mother said, no, she's not. So she said, is she pregnant? And my mother said, no, she's not pregnant. Why are you saying this? Did she have some kind of crazy boyfriend? And she said, no. And then she said, so let me get this straight. You kicked my niece out. She's not on drugs and she's not pregnant and she has no crazy boyfriends. You put her out because she wants to pray 5 times a day and cover her hair. And at that point, my mother and my father called me and said, come home. And that was the beginning of the repair to our relationship. But it took many, many gentle conversations that I didn't always have the maturity to have. Sometimes, I would take a very strong stance, like I'm not showing up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, don't even expect me for the week. Right? I'm going somewhere else. Feeling like that in order to solidify my faith, I needed to, dig my heels down and be stubborn. As time went on and my mother also softened, she just very similar to what Lauren's mother said, I just love you. And when our family is together, can we just find some way to be together? And so initially they were like, we'll celebrate Kwanzaa, right? Like, we won't do Eid, we won't do Christmas, we'll just celebrate Kwanzaa. Can we find a way to be a family, have one belief? Because my family's belief, they had a thing like one God, one faith, one family. Right? And so it was, as we both began to mature in the relationship, I found a way to say, okay, I don't come for Christmas dinner, right? I don't come for the opening of presents, or I don't come for the morning and the opening of presents and the whole Christmas. But I come when my family gathers with the intention of being with my family because many of them come from different places. There are many questions that were asked of me, especially when I decided to be a student of knowledge and study in Egypt and travel to Egypt and to Yemen. My parents were like, basically, these are terrorists. They are, these people running away from their country to America. Why would you go there? And having to really explain to them the difference between Islam and the Muslims in a loving way. And again, for me and my family, being respectful meant that there were some questions I was quiet about. There were, or that I had to answer in a gentle way. Some I'd have to, and not in the heat of the conversation, I'd have to wait maybe a couple weeks or a month later to come back and have that conversation when it was non-confrontational. I also realized that it was really important to serve my parents, like to go to their house for Sunday dinner, when I'm washing the dishes, when I'm cleaning up and my mom's helping me, clean up the kitchen after Sunday dinner. Those would be the times that we could have those kind of conversations in a gentle way. Particularly when I would travel and come back after being gone for a while, which happened often as a student of knowledge. When I would come back, because my mother had missed me, I would literally sit at her feet and begin to tell her stories of things I had encountered. And that was my way of gently, lovingly giving her dawah. Like, this is what happened, I saw this, and then this happened, this is amazing. And she would, at that point, she was willing to kind of drink in all of the stories I would tell her. But to give her, to say to her, you're wrong about this, you're wrong. It only gained in hardness and hard feelings, hurt feelings. In addition to it, I was never going to get very far with my type of parent, in a conversation like that. So I had to learn very quickly how to be humble, how to be soft in speech, and how to, take on the qualities of, to be honest, that service to my family was the way that they understood. Then I would invite my mother to different events, different conferences, and it was kind of like we could come together to different conferences. And so they would come for that. Like, they're coming for the bazaar, the shopping. My mother loves all the different clothes and colorful bazaars, so she's coming for that. You could hear some lecture in the bazaar. The other thing, in all honesty, was once I had children, her being able to come to programs, like my children are in Islamic school, for her to come to those programs. There are a lot of things that just find being very strategic about when those conversations occur are important. And being able to be honest, meaning that when something is wrong, even the Muslims are doing it, it's okay to say, yes, Mama, that's wrong, right? I make no excuses or apologies. For what I don't say, well, they're Muslim, so I must defend it. And I say, right is right and wrong is wrong. And that actually, the fact that I didn't, when I no longer had a defensive technique, then it became easier for us to navigate me being Muslim. Till eventually I took my parents to Egypt, which they loved, and heard the adhan themselves, and upon something they would tell all their family and their friends about, all pictures. We went to Egypt, we went to this big mosque, went to here, and we visited, what is it called, Aisha? Oh, Imam Hussein, and Imam Hussein was this person, and literally just having that experience with my family. I can remember my mother, after returning, putting her head in my lap and saying, and that's my story.
Sister Aisha, we missed the last part when you said when mothers say,
She said, "Forgive me. I didn't." President herself had been in Egypt and seeing that, like hearing the adhan, but also the experience of how impactful something like that can be. And the staunch difference between our life in America as opposed to somewhere else. And particularly me experiencing that as a teenager, it just really opened her eyes. So I think what I really want to say is those experiential things where you're inviting them to participate, right? Without like, I'm giving you this time, it's time for me to give you dawah now, but I'm inviting you to be a part of my life, lovingly. That made all the difference in the world. My family and I are super, super close.
Yeah, so I do have a couple of questions, and if you feel comfortable, you can ask your questions, or you can just write it in the text box. One question, Sister Aisha, for you is how to be humble. Because sometimes it's hard for me to let little arguments go. So that's one. And I guess for both of you, what were the difficult conversation topics with your family members? So Sister Aisha, you can go ahead first.
So, of course, because the Quran is kind of full of things about, having righteousness towards your parents, right? Righteousness, bil walidain. In addition to, I realized I'm not going to have any barakah or get anywhere, right? Arguing back and forth with them, and it only broke their heart and my heart, right? And so in breaking, and it created some, it created those deep hurt feelings, and I realized that just wasn't the relationship that I wanted. But I also had to accept that my parents did not have the experiences that I had. So therefore, to expect them to have the same understanding was unfair. They had not, they didn't have the same experiences. They weren't studying what I was studying. And I had to give credence to what were their experiences that led them to that thinking. My parents being military, not just my parents, but other members of my family, that their experiences were real and created, real perception. In addition to, I was traveling all over the world, getting firsthand experience and had relationships with Muslims, as opposed to they were only learning about Muslims from the news and me. So to expect them to have like this epiphany of, when that's their only source, every news channel, we turn on CNN, it's the same. MSNBC is the same. Fox is so if that's constantly the message they're being fed, then no matter how much I could scream or, stand out against all the messaging, that was their experience. That was their lived experience. And if so for me, being humble was, I need to earn some money so I can give them some different experiences. And that changed our relationship. Now my mother tells me, I saw your lecture on such and such. I was listening to your lecture on such and such. And, there are conversations she will listen to in my lecture that she will never have with me, face to face. So I always think I need to see something. I need to figure out how I'm going to say something so maybe she can listen. Difficult conversations are around, of course, like heaven and hell. Jesus, heaven and hell. Those were the challenging conversations for me. Christmas, actually. Christmas for us was a challenging conversation. Because for them, it wasn't, like for many people, Christmas is culture. But for my family, it's religious.
So, Laura?
So to almost say, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like because my family wasn't religious at all, they just kind of avoided it and like didn't really want to talk about it, didn't really engage in it, tried to pretend like it wasn't a thing. I think like thinking that it would pass and then it just didn't. So I think I do remember particularly like one particular conversation. Everybody has that uncle, right? So I have one uncle who, mashallah, he has a great sense of humor, but he will come at people. And the first time that I saw him, I hadn't, mind you, this is after I have been like eating Christmas and Thanksgiving for years, like hadn't been going probably like 3 years, I would say. And he hadn't seen me in a really long time because that's like the time my family gets together. So we roll up to their house and I'm like, you know, I'm wearing hijab at that point in time. And he's like, oh, look who it is. And I knew something was coming. He's like, look who it is. I thought you would come up here on a camel. I'm just happy I could see your face. And I was like, there we go. Okay, let's do this. So I was like, I'm not even gonna like come at him. I'm just gonna like say something like snarky and keep it moving. And like the whole night he was kind of just like, he was like, what can I do to like provoke her? I want to like provoke her. And after dinner was over, we're sitting down in the living room, like not too many people are there. And I was like, Uncle, let's talk about this. What do you want to know? Like, come on, come and ask me all the questions. What do you want to talk about? I'm still learning. I don't know all the answers, but like, you can't be saying wild stuff like that because that's not okay. Like, and it makes me feel bad. And don't do that. Like, just don't do that. But we can talk about it. Whatever it is you want to talk about, we can talk about it. And so I think that piece around like the urgency of feeling like you need to know all the Islamic answers. In one way, that's like a motivation to study and to learn more, to be like, okay, I want to know what I can say. So I'm prepared to like come back like with the info and like drop knowledge real quick. But at the bottom of it, really the questions and all the difficult conversations I had with my family were coming from a place of like, are you still the same person? Like, are you still, what's different about you? Like, I want to know what's different about you. Like, why did this happen? And what's different? What are you missing? What did you give up? Like, why did you do this? Like, why are you making this decision? And like, those discussions are much more personal in many ways. And like, I don't know, I was able to like navigate discussions around hijab, for example, with like, what does it matter to you if you can't see my hair? Like, we just kind of went back and forth with it like that. And then just like, what does it matter if I cover my hair at a family gathering? Why do you care? Tell me why that's significant. And like at the bottom of it, it was kind of like, yeah, I guess it's not that big of a deal. And then we kind of kept it moving. So I was like, okay, check one off the box. What's the next thing that they've got an issue with? Let's figure out a way to get at that. And so I wasn't like giving Islamic rulings on hijab and like the Islamic fiqh, like here's why, this is the Islamic logic, but they weren't looking for that. They were just looking for some real like, why are you're the person I love, what's gonna make me, I don't know, what's gonna make me understand that you're still the same you. And once I figured out that was at the crux of most of the conflict conversations that I had or wasn't having, even some of the conversations I didn't have, like I have my older sister, we didn't talk about me being Muslim really at all, but like just recently I started sending them presents for Eid. I just sent them in the mail. Like, they'll just arrive at your house and they'll be like, what's this? And so I got calls from my nephews who were like, what's Eid? I know that it's a Muslim thing. Can you tell me about it? And I'm like, yes, I can tell you about it. Let's do it. Like, let's talk about it. Things like that, I think. That's my thought about it.
So, thank you, Lauren. So I have a couple of questions here. Sister Hawa asked, should we regularly pray for our families to become Muslim? And what are the best ways to invite them to Islam? And which English translation would you recommend? And then another question from Sister Sahar is it okay, as both of you mentioned about holidays, and there was a time that you avoided, you didn't go. So Sister Sahar has a follow-up question on that. Is it okay to be with our family during Christian American traditions like Christmas, Thanksgiving, with the intention to be with them? Can we as Muslims give Christmas gifts? Sister
I
Aisha.
want to say, can you hear me? Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I just lost you visually for a moment. So there are a couple of things I want to address about that. And hold on a second. So as it relates to the best way to give dawah to your parents, the first thing is always pray for them. Pray for them. Definitely pray for them. Pray for them often. And when you're in sujood, pray for them. Any chance you get, pray for them. Every family is different, in terms of what's necessary, what's needed. So, for example, and what the questions that my parents had would be very different than Lauren's parents, right? Lauren's family, because they weren't, for us, it was like, you have to prove this to me. There were many nights where I sat down actually with the youth minister, right? At that time, and we'd be going through the Bible, page and verse. And so that's very different than someone, maybe even from a Jewish background or from a non-religious background. And maybe just the manner of character. It may be telling them stories about the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his life. So it really depends on them. Like, what is it that would help them explain Islam? But really, I would do something that Lauren kind of mentioned, and that is listen and engage, right? Listen without fear of what they might ask you. Because sometimes even from their little poking, what they're reviewing are, these are my biases that I picked up. And I don't have anyone that I can ask this question directly to. And so I can kind of nudge at you, which is, it's a defensive technique, or kind of it's a technique of like from behind, I get to address what I know I don't have all the knowledge about. So, I can say these things to you. Like, I have a brother-in-law who returned from, I'm trying to think, he had come back from Iraq. And he had, just being in a war. And when he came back, he was really, just real snarky and, just very standoffish and, sometimes, having bad looks. And I had to realize this man just came back from Iraq. We're not even going to talk about what he was told. And then finally, I just said, how you doing? All right, how you doing? And he said to me, they weren't nice to me. Right? Now, in my mind, I'm like, of course they're not. You're a soldier in uniform in a war, right? Like, in their mind, they're seeing you as the combatant. Of course they weren't nice to you, but that's in my head. But I realized for him, whatever they had told him about that he was either on a peacekeeping mission or whatever he had been trained, that was his lived experience. So again, I think to listen and to answer their questions from a loving place without feeling the need to defend. And if you don't know, I don't have the exact answer about that. To be able to exact answer about that, or this is what I do know, but I'd be happy to ask someone who does know. Right? And some questions are not, when someone asks a question, it doesn't necessarily require an answer. Especially if it's about someone, so this is about someone's behavior, that's not the reason I became Muslim. Right? So I don't know why they behave in that manner. Maybe because of their politics, maybe because they're suffering, maybe because of what their leaders are telling them. I'm not sure, but that's not why I became Muslim. So I think if you listen to your family, that helps a lot. Now, when it comes to translations of Quran, there are some ones I would avoid, that I would avoid just because they can, from the very beginning, they can be very off-putting. Like, for example, there's some of the translations of the Noble Quran can be very off-putting. I think Yusuf Ali, in many cases, is kind of, it's safe, but if it can, the kind of old English that the style of it can be, can kind of keep you distant from the meaning. The clear Quran is one of them. Thinking about the translation from Muhammad Furqan. So I was never able to give a Quran directly to my parents. So what I would do, or what I did, was when I would go stay there, I would leave my Quran by the bedside. And one day, I thought this is never going to work until my mother told me that she had read Surah Maryam. She wanted to know what were our thoughts about Mary. And so it was actually it was about Christmas. She brought it up. And she said, well, I know that you guys honor Mary because there's a chapter in the Quran called Maryam, and I read it. So, if you are Maryam, then you can come. I was like, just because you read Surah Maryam, I'm coming. Like, if you will, I will, that's a good trade. I will come to dinner. So,
So how about going to a Christmas or Thanksgiving?
So Thanksgiving is not a religious holiday. I know that there are differences of opinion from teachers and scholars on this, but it is not something that is religiously based. If you wanted to debate Thanksgiving from a political standpoint, from a social justice standpoint, that would be something, that's another matter. But in terms of it being a religious holiday, there's nothing that would directly support it being haram, and Allah knows best on that matter. And again, there are differences of opinion on that. What my teachers have told me and encouraged me is that because it is not a religious holiday, if it is something that my mother has directly requested, then I make the intention to go be with my parents, right? To have birr walidain. It's not in. Thank God, my parents my entire time growing up, never smoked, never drank alcohol. Did not. They were, when I say very religious, I meant very religious. My parents never cursed. They never said a curse word my entire time growing up. And so I didn't have that same struggle that other families have. Like if they go to their family, there's a lot of, activity. Now, other parts of my family, that is definitely going to be, that is, you might hear a word or two, or, you may, someone may pull out a drink in their own home. And so what I'm just very careful about are the times of the day that I go, and what activities I engage in. So that's as it relates to, Thanksgiving. As it relates to Christmas, again, my boundaries, what I am clear about is that in terms of gift giving, that is not, because that is a part of the celebratory actions of Christmas, right? So the gift giving, all of that, for me, that's a no. As it relates to, gift giving, being there when gifts are being, that whole process, I know from when they wake up in the morning till about noon, that's what's going on. I come after that. Now, my family knows my stance. However, my children are not only my children, they belong to my family. And so my mother could care less. She's like, I have every right to give my grandchildren whatever I choose. And I swallow that. You know what I mean? I tell my children, they know we don't celebrate Christmas, but they're like, we'll take it. She gives, the other thing is we invite them on Eid, especially Adha. Lauren has been a witness to that. She's been at my own Eid, but my parents are there, and you know what I mean? They love lamb. And so they're all excited. Like, yes, you're going to cook lamb, and we're all going to be happy. Big meal of cooked lamb with all the soul food fixings. And so, and invite them to that, especially Adha, because it's something that I always tell them we share Ibrahim in common. Right? So they're always happy to participate in Eid, and we give them presents, and they bring us presents on Eid.
So there may be a situation where parents do not know that their son or their daughter have accepted Islam. So in that case, what would be your advice?
So my advice is I'm a believer in keep the peace until you're able, and until you're able to bridge that conversation. Eventually, if you keep praying and you keep making salah and you keep asking Allah to give you the courage, Allah will give you that courage. And I say to you, I wanted to tell you the story about my family because I don't think anyone, other than the Prophet's family, willing to kill you. And my family, I literally believed, I was like, I'm probably going to be physically harmed by not going to church on Sunday. Like, I was like, my parents are going to kill me. But in the end, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. So I think there's a lot to be said about trusting in Allah, right? And it's really about asking Allah for the right time. But in the meantime, if your family doesn't know, then you navigate. You find ways to navigate, right? Oh, I'm engaged in this in the morning, but I will be there at this time. I'll be there for dinner, right? Another thing, as we grow, my parents are really about like halal meat. They buy halal meat. They know if Aisha's, because there have been times I've come and it's like, there's nothing I can eat. And so then they said, we want her to come. We want her family to be happy. What they used to buy the meat. And I said, you know what? I will buy the meat. I will season the meat. Or I will bring the meat. I'll bring the lamb. I'll bring the chicken. I'll bring it. And so then they started to look forward to that. Like, she's going to bring meats. Right? So that I know that my family has something we can eat. And then that becomes, believe it or not, those become conversation pieces. That became a conversation for my family. Like, what does halal mean? What is it? To the point that now my parents only eat halal meat. Right? Because it's cleaner meat. So you have to almost find some of the non-confrontational things to talk to me about.
I was once asked with one of our sisters, I'm going to Christmas and my family, and they don't know yet. So what shall I do? And I told her, just be vegetarian. Just say I'm a vegetarian. I don't touch any meat anymore. Or, I cannot bring. So there are ways, you be smart, and and as Sister Aisha is saying that, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and for help, and inshallah you'll find ways to address these situations. So
it does get easier. I just want to give you hope that it gets easier.
Cosign. It does.
It's easier, especially with time, and as they get, eventually they just get used to it. And they'll finally. They also have questions. They're gaining the curve, right? Like, tell me why you have to wear that thing on your head.
Mm-hmm. And in many cases, they are, as Sister Lauren also was saying, that there are two ways to look at it. Sometimes parents say hijab and they see as, all right, what's going on? She's going like in the 18th century, said now, and what some. And the other way is that they, I can say as a parent myself that, okay, is she going to be harmed by other people? Is she now going to become a target of the people who do not like Islam or do not want to see that? So that's another factor that I notice also happens.
I think that's something I think that is a very loving way, and it's very truthful to look at your family. Like, everything is not confrontational. Some things are about, they have a loving concern, right, for your safety and well-being. I remember that definitely being for my uncles, right? They were like, my uncles were, they never, no matter what, you're beautiful. It's beautiful. Be careful. Everybody in the world is not good. That's what, I can hear my uncle saying that. You just be careful. Everybody in the world is not good. So My mother was more concerned that, again, because she had raised me a certain way. So she was like, are you going to be able to get a job? Are you going to be able to, have your full career? Like, how are you going to? She literally was concerned. She said, there's so many obstacles as people and as women. Why would you add more obstacles to your life? And that was a gentle, loving concern. And I said, well, and then I'd say to my mom, well, Jesus added many concerns. God helped him, he'll help me. So, and now then it was just, okay, well, just make sure it's cute. And she was like, just don't look like a ragamuffin. That's my mama. Just don't look like a ragamuffin. If it's going to be long,
earlier today, I was talking to someone who is interested in Islam, and I was saying them, and the question I was asked was, what about my parents and how they what would be their reaction and response, and I as you and both of you were saying that just keep praying for them, and I shared with them that I know a brother here in our community that his parents became Muslim in their 80s. When they, after seeing their son, such a good Muslim, such a good behavior, taking care of them, and they both became Muslim when they were, I think, in their mid 80s. So you never know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings and guidance.
And my witnessed Shahada on her deathbed. It was the last thing before she passed away. So you just never know.
Right. And at Adams, I don't know if Sister Aisha or Lauren, you remember there was a sister who was 94 years old when she took Shahada. Yeah. So this is again blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as we say, that guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is people look at us, the way we behave, the way we act, our morals and our characters, and many times it's not the words that convince people; it's our behavior and our morals, our akhlaq, as we say. We are over our time, and Jazakallah khair to both of you, Sister Lauren and Sister Aisha. And thank you, everyone. Inshallah, looking forward to seeing all of you. Inshallah, next Thursday again at 6:30. And those of you who attend the Quran class, it will be Sunday at 10 a.m. So last Sunday, a couple of you were brave enough to come to the Al-Hijrah. So we did partially at the center and through Zoom. So we will do that, inshallah.